Life is full of seemingly unsolvable mysteries. Where did we come from? Why are we here? What happens when we die? Who framed Roger Rabbit? Some other question that starts with when. I myself am often kept awake at night by the immeasurable spectrum of cultural longevity. Memes, you see, the DNA of the soul. The inexplicable survival, no, the outright multiplicity of seemingly benign products of bygone eras. What makes art truly timeless, against all odds, despite the undeniable specificity of its subject matter? Is it sheer quality? Is it raw emotion? Is it simply selective nostalgia, an illusory desperation to convince ourselves we only change so much, and our tastes are concrete enough to justify the self? I truly don't know, but rest assured, I will rewatch Shrek 2 as many times as it takes to figure it out. Shrek 2 began what I would describe as DreamWorks' shitpost era. 2004 was the year DreamWorks Animation split off from DreamWorks Entertainment, meaning Jeff Katzenberg, notorious hater of Disney, was officially fully in charge. Animated movies don't get made in less than a year, but the shift in power is notable on a larger scale of corporate trends. The wild success of the first two Shreks and relative failure of basically every other DreamWorks solo venture since The Prince of Egypt pointed the company in the direction of shitposting. If you pull pre-existing IPs, co-productions with Aardman, and just for the sake of it, the Kung Fu Panda franchise out of the lineup, here's what DreamWorks made in the 10 years following Shrek 2. Shark Tale, Madagascar, Over the Hedge, Shrek the Third, B-Movie, Madagascar 2, Monsters vs. Aliens, Shrek 4, Megamind, Puss in Boots, Madagascar 3, The Croods, Turbo, and the Penguins of Madagascar. Like any of it or not, aside from Megamind, this is about 20 hours of cynical schlock. Overtly superficial, comically confused, about as prone to poor aging as stories made mainly for children are capable of being. And it's hard to argue it didn't come to pass because of the ridiculous success of Shrek 2, a deeply cynical, demographically scattershot, categorically schlocky movie. Or is it? We know it's meta, self-referential, and unusually culturally specific for a children's movie, more so at least than the original Shrek. Whereas Shrek was a clever, if a bit unsubtle parody of traditional fairy tales as well as Disney movies, Shrek 2 is a black mirror of the modern fairy tales. The happily ever after, the myth of status, the idea that LA is a nice place to be. It's more than a parody. It's a meme itself, a giant one. And in this sense, it's like a bridge between the original Shrek and the entire DreamWorks shitpost era. This is our first lead, our first foray into the murky waters of Shrek 2's enduring legacy. Whether or not the modern affection for it is ironic, the fact remains that Shrek 2 was a critical and commercial success. The wrong lessons were clearly learned from that success, the numbers can tell us that much, but of course this means somewhere buried in this film are some right lessons. So sure, we can say Shrek 2 is not a bad movie, and that's a good start, but you could say that about any Pixar movie, and I dare you to tell me one thing about Brave. They're Scottish. That's the one thing I remember. Big fucking deal. So is Shrek. Quality does not necessarily define a film's legacy, but the lasting works tend to be either inspiringly great or hilariously bad. The Godfather, The Room, Shrek 2. Where does it fall? Undeniably, this avenue is a trap. The fallacy here is that Shrek 2 is not intrinsically iconic. Remember, it's a meme, effectively irrelevant as a cohesive work of art. It's good, it's fun, but that doesn't matter. Shrek 2 is, at its core, a fairly simple story about the work it takes to make a real relationship work. What happens after the happily ever after? The changes we must make for those we love, the difference between healthy changes and unhealthy ones. Is it earth-shattering? No, but it's set dressing, I tell you. I've wasted my time and your time explaining it. So, let me contextualize. In my research, I conducted a great many interviews, looking for insight into the patterns of Shrek 2's most memorable aspects as a text. What I found was that less than 40% of respondents remembered that Harold refused to give Fiona the love potion, an equally important measure of his redemption as taking a magic bullet for Shrek, and nobody cares. Would you like to know something every single respondent remembered? Sexy chauffeur manboy Kyle. And don't get me wrong, I can perfectly well see why. Look at that ass, I'd eat a steak off of it. But the man is only in frame for 2 minutes. The conclusion we can extrapolate is simple. Shrek 2 is a vehicle for thematically dissonant gags. It's a 90-minute Disney-flavored episode of Family Guy. And while that probably sounds bad, it helps us unpeel what makes it work. Shrek 2 is like an onion. Stinky if you eat it raw, but given time to simmer, it becomes sweet, fragrant, and tenderizes meat. This is a bad metaphor for how much hidden effort is put into its absurdist punchlines. Absurdism is the very highest form of comedy. I will not hear arguments, and Shrek 2 is much better at it than Family Guy. The formula here is to punctuate overtly absurd scenarios with surprisingly tame but self-referential dialogue, regardless of which side of the punchline. It's like the movie is always winking at you, and it helps you remember better because you're essentially always a part of an active inside joke. It's cute when Shrek asks Gingy if he still knows the Muffin Man, who, in fact, still lives on Drury Lane, but Mongo the giant gingerbread Godzilla creature is burned into your memory because why the fuck would you have expected that as recently as like 30 seconds ago? It's a pretty simple formula, but clever enough jokes become instantly quotable, memeable, or in some cases, infinitely replicable. See Steamed Hams for reference. Spaghetti at the wall comedy was actually a pretty common practice in the early to mid-2000s. Frat pack movies like Anchorman, Step Brothers, Tropic Thunder, except Tropic Thunder is the best one, they all did this exact same thing. Beat you over the head with jokes, you'll like enough of them to look back on the movie fondly. What I think is Shrek 2's secret ingredient is onions. I mean children. Kid-friendly comedy is, by nature, less topical, and therefore less culturally specific. Maybe this is the key to Shrek 2's longevity, a unique blend of style and subject matter, tailored to weather the endlessly raging sandstorm of time itself. Shrek 2's comedy is built around subverting traditional fantasy and fairy tale expectations with cynical, modern sensibilities. It's a very dark comedy, all things considered. I mean, Harold hires a hitman to murder Shrek, but that's not the joke. The joke is that he's bested by a hairball, because he's a cat. Absurdist subversion, do you get it? Fairy tale conventions are in fact so old, really any remotely modern principle can be used to counter them. Fairy Godmother isn't a Disney villain, she's an egomaniacal venture capitalist with an ironically positive public image. She's Mom from Futurama, or Ellen DeGeneres. There, that's 25 years of relevance packed into one sentence. It's easy to track, but even still, I can tell, and I think you can too, we're missing another layer. Another onion layer. See, the Fairy Godmother is a great character, one might even say iconic. Unlike Lord Farquaad, who was at least allegedly meant to represent Michael Eisner, she's not based on any specific person. She's just a subversion of a stock character. You might say this, at the very least, makes her, as an element of Shrek 2, intrinsically iconic. But then let me ask you this. Why does she sing a full rendition of Bonnie Tyler's Holding Out for a Hero during the climax? And more importantly, why does that work? Stay with me. See, I realize now that I've been going about this all wrong. I thought it was a logical folly to analyze Shrek 2 as a cohesive work of art, because it's nothing more than a metaphorical trebuchet of proto-internet humor, launching randomly assorted and yet selectively dark meme content at the pre-social media castle of performed perfection. But no. This is only the lesson taken by DreamWorks, the wrong lesson, that which led them to an era full of increasingly lazy, demographically incoherent duds. I said it myself already. Shrek 2 is one giant meme, an organism, a neural network of clever observations that feeds back into itself like an Ouroboros of disdain for the modern world. The harsh truth is that Shrek 2 may simply be a sheer masterpiece of cultural serendipity. If there's one thing I hate to do, it's assert that writers lucked into writing something really good. But the Fairy Godmother, more than Shrek, more than Fiona, even more than my beloved Puss in Boots, instills in me a suffocating dread that while Shrek 2 might be a charming parody of fairy tale conventions, and even a successful sequel that expands both the world and characters of its predecessor without losing its voice, this may have been the only ambition of its creators. There may be nothing to learn here at all, only a perfect, happy accident we as mere students of the craft can only attempt to recreate and fail in increasingly spectacular fashion. The two core tenets of the Fairy Godmother as a character are as follows. 1. Venture capitalist. 2. Stage mom. This, we know, was on purpose. The Fairy Godmother was, from her earliest design, modeled after stage moms, and it makes sense. This is a story about people selfishly making decisions for the people they love. The ways in which she is a terrible parent play off of the ways in which Harold is a terrible parent. Whereas his motivation is to blend in, being a frog, Fairy Godmother's is to be the very center of the entire universe. Nothing, and I mean nothing, Fairy Godmother does is not attention-seeking behavior. From her first song running just a little too long, being just a little too extravagant, to the very end, where the only way she can think to stall the night is to do an entire fucking prepared performance as if she was gonna find a time to do it anyway. And why it matters, again, is that it's just another needle drop. This is what I think may have been an accident, and by extension, serves as a microcosm for the philosophy of Shrek 2. The question we must ask here is a very chicken and egg sort of conundrum. Is it the song that makes the sequence, or the sequence that supports the song? Would the Fairy Godmother's performance, and by extension Shrek's assault on the castle, be anywhere near as memorable if it were set to an original piece of music, even one with a similar tone? And of course, if not, how can we know for sure if the creative powers behind Shrek 2 knew that and made this choice on purpose? Licensed music is common in the Shrek franchise. Even the first movie was packed with needle drops. It's safe to say the opening scene of Shrek, set to Smash Mouth's All-Star, is the single most iconic meme the property has given us. But in itself, does it make any fucking sense? No, not really. It's a song that's vaguely about being an outcast, but so are 400 pseudo-ska pop-punk singles released in the late 1990s. Holding Out for a Hero is somehow less timely, but it is more specific to the situation. From a raw meme standpoint, its position as a recognizable reference, even as a then already 20-year-old song, suggests the song is what matters here. It even fits pretty well into the punchline system we've already established. Of course, the Fairy Godmother is going to stall with a performance, you say, and then, holy shit, is that Holding Out for a Hero? And so you say, well, there it is. Your proof, Mr. Narrator, that this was all on purpose. Shrek 2 is a masterpiece, a timeless classic built specifically to be timeless by being as bizarrely, self-referentially timely as possible. Now wait just a moment, viewer. We're not quite finished. I've led you into another trap, as Shrek 2 led me before. For you see, why would the Fairy Godmother be holding out for a hero when her own son Prince Charming is already here trying to kiss Fiona? Because she didn't want him to, of course. A true stage mom would never be happy seeing her child actually succeed. Welcome to the real video, where we discuss the complex implications of the Fairy Godmother's secret arc to actually help Fiona, and what it means for the classically cynical, double negative pro-fairy tale subtext of Shrek 2 as a parody of itself.